Have you ever noticed that the more we try to control everything, the more we feel out of control? The truth is, most people who live anxiously today aren't sick, they're tired. Tired of meeting expectations, of proving themselves, of maintaining an image that demands too much effort and offers too little peace. Anxiety isn't always an external enemy, an old trauma, or a chemical issue. Sometimes, it's just a symptom of a life lived under pressure. And here's a statement that might sound counterintuitive. The more you try to avoid anxiety, the more it grows. The secret isn't to fight it, it's to let go of what's feeding it. We live in an era where calm has become a luxury, where resting is almost a sin, and admitting you're not okay is seen as weakness. Social media teaches us to appear strong. Productivity has become the new religion. And the result? A generation of exhausted people trying to seem happy, but who, deep down, are screaming for help. Most don't need another pill, another course, or another technique. They need permission. Permission to breathe, to fail, to stop, to say, I can't handle everything. And you know what happens when you do that? Space opens up. And in that space, anxiety begins to leave on its own. Maybe you're living with a silent pressure no one sees. Maybe no one knows. But just waking up feels like running an emotional marathon. You try to smile, try to perform, try to keep control. But inside there's a knot, a tightness, a restlessness that won't go away. What if I told you that knot doesn't loosen with more effort, but with less? That maybe the relief you're searching for isn't in what you'll achieve next, but in what you can let go of right now? The problem was never the challenge. It was the extra weight you've been carrying. What if anxiety is actually your body's way of saying, this isn't working anymore? What if, instead of fighting it, you could listen to it? What if, instead of trying to be strong all the time, you allowed yourself to be human? It might seem small, but it's huge. Because in a world that demands everything all the time, breathing with ease has become an act of resistance. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about here. This is an intimate conversation, no magic formulas, no false promises, just an invitation to let go of the pressure and finally live with more presence, more truth, and less fear. Some people wake up tired before they even get out of bed, not because their body is exhausted, but because their mind is already carrying the weight of a day that hasn't even started. It's like there's an invisible demand, an internal voice saying, you need to handle everything. And without realizing it, they enter a cycle of anxiety that has nothing to do with the present, but with the fear of failing in a future that only exists in their head. This constant pressure doesn't come from outside. It comes from within, from perfectionism disguised as responsibility. And honestly, no one told them that living like this is like trying to run with a backpack full of rocks. You can keep going, but eventually your body would demand payment. Have you noticed how anxiety feeds on control? It's like the mind says, if I can predict everything, nothing will go wrong. But deep down, this only increases the strain. A practical example, imagine someone who needs to present a project at work. They prepare, rehearse, review, but still feel their chest tighten. Why? Because they can't accept that some things are simply beyond our control. Perfectionism demands in human performance, and anxiety responds by trying to protect, but in practice, it imprisons. The heart races, the breath shortens, and the mind replays negative scenarios as if they're inevitable. And all of this happens before reality even knocks on the door. The truth is, many people live with a feeling that they're late for something that was never defined, as if there's a race happening, and they're always at a disadvantage. And so, every small pause feels like a mistake. Every rest becomes guilt. Every failure becomes an absolute defeat. But was life made to be won or to be lived? That's the question few ask, and maybe the answer lies there. Because when we start to see anxiety as a reflection of what we're trying to control too much, a new perspective opens up. And in that opening, something begins to emerge, which we'll explore next. There's something curious about control. The more you try to hold on, the more it slips through your fingers. It's like grabbing wet sand. Force doesn't help, it only speeds up the loss. And when the mind enters this controlling mode, it loses the lightness of presence. Everything becomes calculation, risk, threat. What was meant to be a conversation turns into mental rehearsal. a meeting becomes a performance analysis. A simple good morning carries an expectation of response. The person isn't living anymore. They're managing life as if it were a company about to go bankrupt. But humans weren't born to be CEOs of their own anxiety. They were born to breathe, to feel, to trust. And that, my friend, can't be measured with checklists. Those who try to control everything are, deep down, afraid to feel, because feeling hurts. It's easier to predict than to be vulnerable, easier to create scenarios than to deal with uncertainty. The anxious mind prefers the illusion of control over the risk of surrender. And this comes at a high cost: disconnection. You stop being with others and start being with yourself all the time, in a tiring, judgmental, demanding internal dialogue. Have you ever seen someone on a beautiful beach? Their body there, but their mind lost thinking about what could go wrong next week? Yeah, anxiety doesn't just steal peace. It steals the now. And without the now, everything loses color, smell, taste. But there's a turning point, the moment you realize you don't need to hold on anymore. That it's not weak to let go, it's wise. Letting go of control isn't giving up, it's trusting. Trusting that even if things don't go as planned, you'll handle it. Trusting that life isn't a closed system, but a dance, and dancing requires surrender. When you trade control for presence, you begin to notice that what seemed impossible to bear becomes bearable. And more than that, it starts to lose its power over you. And if this is the first step to breathing differently in the midst of chaos, maybe that's what we'll start to understand now. Have you noticed how we've been taught to associate personal value with productivity? From an early age, we hear that those who don't act don't succeed. Time is money, resting is falling behind. And without realizing it, we feed a silent belief that we only deserve to breathe in peace when we've finished all our tasks. But the list never ends, right? There's always another bill, another commitment, another goal. The problem is that living at this constant pace turns our body into a battlefield. The mind races, the heart pounds, sleep doesn't come, all without anything real having happened yet. It's the body reacting to an invisible pressure that society applauds, but that consumes us from within. And here's a detail few mention: how rest has become an act of courage. Yes, courage, because stopping in a world that doesn't stop is almost revolutionary. When you choose to turn off your phone, stop answering emails at 10 p.m., or simply allow yourself to do nothing, it feels like you're doing something wrong. But in reality, you're freeing yourself. A practical example: take an afternoon to walk. Without a destination, without a podcast, without a goal, just you and the moment. At first, your mind will resist. It'll say there are more useful things to do. But if you persist, you'll realize that in this nothing, there's more healing than in any attempt at control. Anxiety often is just a cry for a pause, a request from the body. Hey, slow down, listen to me, feel me. But we ignore it, right? Push through with coffee, fake it with smiles, distract with screens. And so we drift further from ourselves. The cure isn't in doing more, but in being more. Being more present, more gentle, more honest with yourself. Because some days, the most productive thing you can do is nothing. And when that sinks in, something inside begins to change. Not abruptly, but like a gentle breeze that whispers. Maybe what you're searching for so desperately only appears when you stop searching. There's a moment in life when we realize that being at peace is more important than being right. And that changes everything. Because many of the pressures that fuel our anxiety don't come from real obligations, but from internal battles we fight with our own image. I can't fail. I have to prove my worth. I need to show I'm strong. These are phrases we carry in silence, but they weigh like shackles. And the most curious thing is that almost no one around us demands this from us. We demand it from ourselves, out of pride, fear, or not wanting to seem weak. But isn't there strength in admitting we can't handle everything? Freeing yourself from this self-imposed pressure is like taking off armor after years. Suddenly, you feel light and vulnerable. And that's okay. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's humanity. When you allow yourself to feel, to cry, to not know, to ask for help, you reconnect with something modern society tries to hide: the truth of the soul. Want a practical example? Try saying, I don't know in a meeting, or I can't help right now to someone who always expects something from you. At first, it'll feel wrong. Guilt will creep in, but then liberation follows. Because it's in this space of truth that anxiety loses its power. It doesn't feed on reality. It lives on the fear of what others will think. And maybe that's the key, to stop living to prove and start living to feel. It's not about abandoning responsibilities or becoming indifferent. It's about adjusting the focus, trading the image for the essence. When you start asking yourself, what's true for me right now? Instead of what's expected of me, everything changes. You'll still have challenges, yes, but they'll come with a more stable center, a longer breath, a clearer mind, and slowly, you'll begin to notice that letting go of pressure doesn't weaken you, it strengthens you. And this, as we'll explore next, has a lot to do with time and how you relate to it. Anxiety has an intimate relationship with time, more precisely, with our attempt to control it. We're always jumping into the future, as if the solution to all our problems lies there. When I graduate, when I get that job, when I have enough money. And so we postpone real life, believing it only begins after something happens. But the problem is that this after never arrives. There's always another step, another goal, another demand. And the present, which is the only real time, gets ignored as if it were just an intermission. But it's precisely in this intermission that life happens. And the more we run from it, the more anxiety chases us. It's like being on a high-speed train, looking out the window in a hurry, but seeing nothing. Time passes, but you don't feel it. Your body is here, but your mind lives elsewhere. And this wears you out. A simple example. Have you ever tried to eat a meal with total presence? No phone, no distraction, just savoring each bite? It seems easy, but your mind will pull you. It will remind you of the bill you didn't pay, the email you didn't answer. And that's when you realize how much you've unlearned how to be whole, to be now, to be real. Anxiety often isn't haste, it's absence. It's a reflection of a soul that can't find itself in the present moment. But something beautiful happens when you start respecting the timing of things. When you understand that everything has a rhythm, a cycle, its own maturation. It's like planting a tree. You don't pull the root to see if it's growing. You water, wait, trust. And anxiety dissolves a little when we accept that life is like that too. That not everything depends on our haste. That sometimes the wisest thing is to slow down, to stop running and start walking, to stop predicting and start observing. And in this calmer, more whole, more human rhythm, the mind also begins to find space. And in that space, something profound can emerge. And that's exactly what we'll touch on next. There's something no one tells you about anxiety. It's not fought with force, but with gentleness. Most people try to defeat it like an enemy, with rigid formulas, unattainable goals, daily demands. But anxiety isn't an enemy. It's a messenger. It comes to say that something is out of balance, something that's been ignored for too long. And ignoring this message only amplifies it. The mind screams because the heart has been silenced. And in this scream, we try to cover our ears with distractions, productivity, comparisons. But the more noise outside, the harder it is to hear what's inside. And that's where the problem lies. We're distancing ourselves from ourselves with a haste no one can explain. That's why healing, or perhaps transformation, begins with the simple act of self-acceptance, of asking yourself, what am I feeling right now without judgment? It might seem silly, but it's powerful. A practical example. Instead of saying, I'm anxious, I need to calm down, try saying, there's a part of me that's scared right now. What is it trying to tell me? This shift in language changes everything. Because instead of fighting yourself, you extend a hand. You stop being your own executioner and start being your own caregiver. And in this new place, more compassionate and less demanding, anxiety begins to lose its grip on your life. Because what it fears most is being heard with love. We weren't taught to be gentle with ourselves. We were taught to be strong, competitive, infallible. But gentleness is a form of strength few have the courage to practice. And it starts with simple gestures. Sleeping well, eating mindfully, respecting your own limits, saying no without guilt. When you start treating yourself as you would someone you love, your inner world changes. And this inner world dictates how you feel, act, live. Anxiety might return, and it will sometimes, but it won't dominate you anymore, because now you know the way back home. And on this path, there's something that hasn't been said yet, but that needs to be felt. That's what we'll touch on in the final point. Letting go of pressure doesn't mean abandoning life. It means finally living it. We grew up believing that the tighter we grip, the more the world will work, as if everything depended on our effort, our rigidity, our control. But the truth is, often it's when we let go that things start to flow. Like the moment you stop forcing an answer and hours later, it simply appears. Or when you stop searching for someone and suddenly the right person shows up. Life has a rhythm that can't be forced. And when we enter this rhythm without so much rigidity, without so much fear, anxiety loses the throne it sat on. This shift in posture doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, a practice, a relearning. Because deep down, letting go of pressure is also letting go of the identity we built with it. I'm the responsible one. I'm the one who handles everything. I'm the one who endures. Letting go of this is scary. Fear of not being seen, fear of disappointing, fear of losing value. But in reality, true value isn't in how much you endure, but in how much you respect yourself. A direct example: some people only feel love when they're solving others' problems. But what about their own problems? Their own exhaustion? Their own need to be cared for? Being strong all the time is a trap disguised as a virtue. In the end, anxiety begins to dissolve when you understand that life isn't a stage, but a journey, and that you don't need to play a role, you need to feel the path, with stumbles, pauses, tears, and smiles. There's no manual for living without anxiety, but there's an internal compass that points toward lightness, and this compass is called truth. When you start living from a more truthful place, less demanding, more human, everything changes, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest freedom anyone can find is this: to let go of the pressure and finally breathe.